After transferring your self-portrait using the grid method, the next step is to erase all of your grid lines. Make sure to take your time when erasing the grid lines. It took me about 10 minutes to erase all the grid lines. Pay attention to what you're doing and make sure not to crinkle your paper. Now it's time to start painting my self-portrait. I chose to start with my first tint. The reason why is because I like to start with the lighter color first. It allows me to kind of warm up and get into the swing of things, and also messing up with a light color is a lot easier to fix than messing up with my darkest shade. It's going to take 2 coats to make sure it's a nice flat finish. Since I don't have a lot of number 1 tints, it didn't take me more than about 20 minutes to do both coats. Painting 2 coats of a value could take anywhere from 20 minutes up to an hour. Your goal should always be to finish painting the value that you created on the same day, because you won't be able to save your paint. When painting, make sure to paint all the way up to the pencil line. You'll find that you'll have to paint over the pencil line at some point to make sure the different hues line up next to each other. You should not see any pencil lines when you're done with your monochromatic self-portrait. The next value I chose to paint was my hue. Painting both coats of my hue took about an hour. When I started painting around the hairline, I found it very helpful that I had labeled all the shapes with a value number. Without those numbers, I would have been really confused. The very small areas around my eyes, I used the tiniest brush, so try and make sure to use the right size brush with the right size area. Notice that while I'm painting, I continue to turn my paper so that I have the right angle when painting. I'm also edging my shapes and making sure I have enough paint on my brush. The next value I'm choosing to paint is the number 2 tint. Painting 2 coats of this value took me 40 minutes. You'll notice that as I paint, I use the same techniques we talked about before. I first start by edging my shapes, and then I fill in the shape with the value. I used all 4 sizes of the brush to make sure I used the right size brush with the right size shape. As I edge my shapes, I make sure that I'm slightly overlapping on the other value that's already put on the paper. This ensures that I don't have any white spots in between the value or I don't see any pencil lines. The next value I'm painting is my number 5 shade. Painting this value took about 10 minutes. This is the darkest value of my monochromatic self-portrait, so I want to make sure to take my time and not mess up. If I got this value on a lighter value, it would be very difficult to hide it. Even though there's not a lot of the number 5 shade, it is important to put into my monochromatic self-portrait because it does bring dimension. The last value I painted is the number 3 tint. Painting 2 coats of this value took an hour. Since there is a lot of the number 3 tint in my monochromatic self-portrait, the most difficult part was actually figuring out where to start painting so my hand didn't get in the wet areas of the paint. I like that I chose to paint the number 3 tint last in order to show you how the painting really comes together. It also allowed me to make sure that I overlapped all my values so that there was no white spots and no pencil lines. What I found to be most difficult was painting around the lines underneath my eyes, since the lines were a number 5 shade, and they were so small that it was very difficult to edge in between them. Looking back at it, I probably should have left those to the very end. The last step to finishing my monochromatic self-portrait was to paint the background. Painting 2 coats of the background took about 15 minutes. I of course edged first before filling in the background. I chose to paint the background last because I wasn't sure what color I wanted to do. If you are confident in the color scheme you've chosen to do, you can choose to paint the background first. Eventually, the reason why I chose to do an orange background is because orange and blue are complementary colors.